Build back better. That was the Biden promise on the campaign trail. He's 1 week into the new job. He's moved in 2 dogs. He's gotten himself a few new cabinet members and signed over 30 executive orders. But the big question, do you feel like your life is better under Joe Biden's presidency? Welcome to the latest edition of The Huddle. Hey, this is the latest edition of The Huddle. My name is Marc Ross. I'm joined today by our good friend, Brendan Kownacki, good guy to know, strategist, executive producer extraordinaire. I said 2 weeks ago that I was sick of January, and we're coming up to the end of it. How are you feeling about January, Brendan?
Mark, I have to say, this is the January that just won't end. It's a lot of people have actually pointed out that it's been a roller coaster for America in this month, where we saw insurrection, impeachment, and an inauguration. A lot of people were looking for a fresh start with Joe Biden, and I think that's what we're starting to see peek out from under the clouds. What did you think of the inauguration last week? I think this is a new day for America, a phrase that I think the new president had tweeted out. What did you think?
I think anytime you can get Lady Gaga, J-Lo, Garth Brooks, and Amanda Gorman, the poet laureate, wow, what a great reflection of America from sea to shining sea. Obviously very subdued, but I think the team Biden did a really good job in terms of the pageantry. I thought the Tom Hanks event at the end of the night was really great. And obviously those fireworks, I'm a good 5-6 miles from the Washington Monument. I could hear them. It was pretty amazing. So I think all in all, you got to give a lot of credit to Team Biden. And, we're rolling into a new presidency. I thought it was pretty exciting.
Patriotism was high. I think that given the security concerns and, of course, the coronavirus with a very limited in-person audience, This was a momentous occasion, and it certainly is the beginning of a new political chapter for our country. Of course, the Bernie Sanders meme was one of the things that controlled the narrative, which was a little good humor for people who needed it. But of course, there were always going to be the dissenters. There's been a lot of talk about Joe Biden wearing a Rolex. I guess there was some confusion that just because he's a Democrat, that they think this was going to be the first poor president. But I think, there's always going to be naysayers. I thought he had some really strong messaging when he came out, very much in contrast to what we had seen 4 years ago at the Trump inauguration. Joe Biden said he wanted to end the uncivil war. Do you think he's going to be able to heal the deep fractures in America right now?
No, but I do think the wording is very positive. I do think the inauguration, the effort, like I said, having the cross section of different speakers, the poetry, the pomp and circumstances, obviously seeing the past presidents there, I think was really important. But no, I don't think the uncivil war is going to be civilized anytime soon.
In contrast, though, to Joe Biden's arrival, we also have the brewing second impeachment trial. This is another chapter that I'm still kind of stunned that we're doing this. Just you had predicted on this very show a couple of weeks back that this wouldn't happen till February. That's what we're seeing now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only we're going to kick off on February 8th. I mean, I guess they sworn in the judges. Leahy is going to be in charge of the procedures. But I just had the sense that it was going to happen after they got a few cabinet members in there. I do think the Democrats are going to try to get through some kind of COVID relief bill. And factually, I think getting more evidence to come to bear doesn't help Trump whatsoever. And listen, I think there's been a lot of stuff that's been said. There'll be a lot more stuff that is said about this, whether this is constitutional or not. I think it's a bunch of rubbish. I think most of the stuff that's being said on Fox News is pretty disingenuous. The fact is, the guy committed, heinous crimes, high crimes and misdemeanors on the final days of his presidency. That's got to be accounted for. So, I think it's really important to get members of Congress on the record, regardless if he gets acquitted or not, but it's really important to get these guys on the record where they stand.
How much does the Biden team want to stay away from this? Because I as far as I can tell, there's no upside for President Biden to see him impeached or acquitted. We know that actually in the Senate, Chief Justice John Roberts declines to oversee the trial, saying that it doesn't exactly fit his constitutional duty. and Vice President Kamala Harris also wanted to stay out of this. Something so toxic that these two people who are very politically opposite both want to stay away from it. How does anyone really want to be part of this trial?
Possibly Trump himself. I'm sure he'd love to testify on the floor of the Senate. No, nobody wants to deal with this. There was a test vote, if you will, yesterday. Only 5 Republicans voted to see the procedure move forward. Nobody wants to deal with this. As a government, it's important to get folks on the record. Sometimes democracy is distasteful. Sometimes it's not pleasant, but it never stops. And the fact is, what happened on January 6th is a rupture of our system, and there has to be some accountability for it.
Well, I think anything could happen as we go into this. Now with Harris and John Roberts declining to oversee the trial, the duty went to President pro tempore Patrick Leahy, who ended up in the hospital yesterday with muscle spasms across his body. The man is 80 years old. He's the senior senator from Vermont. I think that now we could not really count out any result or any happening when it comes to seeing this trial through.
Yeah, when he actually yesterday swore in the jury, which is all the members of the Senate, I was struck by he didn't seem that vigorous. So I wasn't surprised that he was, taken to the hospital. I don't know. There are a lot of senior citizens on Capitol Hill. I don't know. There's not really much to say. The vigor, the energy isn't there. I mean, obviously we hope the senator is feeling better and can do the duty, but it's not a great scene for the U.S. Senate at all to see sluggishness and sickness in the Senate.
Not necessarily not senior citizens, but we've got some new blood who is coming into the cabinet with our first set of approvals that have come through. This is something we've been tracking since the beginning of this show. We've been trying to give that inner circle analysis of the Biden government that's been coming in. Tell me about who we've seen pass through the Senate so far.
Yeah, so we have Blinken, the Secretary of State. We've got Lloyd Austin, Defense. Janet Yellen is in there. Key jobs, the 3-4 most senior roles of the U.S. government have been filled, which is really positive. It's been interesting to see who they're calling across the Pacific, across the Atlantic. It's exciting to see these guys move in there, get their new jobs, hit the ground running. I've also been interested about the social strategy, the way they've been communicating. They've all seemed to be a bit more active on Twitter than we certainly saw from the last administration in terms of the various cabinet members. So that's been interesting. What are your thoughts about the communication aspect of all this?
I think it's very interesting to see just as these folks have settled in. I know that we also saw the president on a massive Zoom call swear in over 1,000 lower level bureaucrats to take posts within these departments. And they even had noted that despite the possibility of legal challenges to some of the political and apolitical appointees who had been dismissed, that they were just interested in forming a new government. I think this bullish strategy is going to show really that the Biden administration wants to get down to work. We saw the president sign an unprecedented 33 executive orders and actions in his first week in office. This is him really wanting to set his agenda and say, he wants to erase as much of what he considers to be the misdeeds of the Trump administration and just get to what is really going to be that build back better strategy.
I mean, we're so close to it. I'm interested if it's gaining traction outside the Beltway. Obviously, we pay attention to this stuff on an hourly basis. But do most Americans know that we've got a new administration? Do they know about Janet Yellen coming on board? Do they know about Tony Blinken? But what is your sense? Is it getting outside the Beltway, or are people realizing there's a new team in town?
I think that what you're starting to see on the ground is just the early cracks in the system. There's certainly been a lot of upheaval around the Keystone Pipeline, especially. President Biden's halting of the pipeline in his day one executive order has led to hundreds of people actually losing jobs when it comes to construction of that pipeline. So that's definitely building some anger in the middle of the country there. But beyond that, I think it's very early to say just what the early reviews are. I know we've seen some ups and downs in the stock market, but that's it. it's really hard to judge based on 1 week of performance, especially while we have this shadow of an impeachment and COVID and so many other things that we're going to be judging the work of bureaucratic departments.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too. I'm curious to see when Biden will actually leave the White House, whether that is a trip to Ottawa, whether it's a trip to Mexico City, whether that's a trip to Kansas City. I don't know. Will he take this show on the road, or is he going to be really limited to doing his job inside the Beltway? I think that's going to be something you got to pay attention to.
Well, I know we do want to get to something that I know that he has spent a lot of time on. Certainly, we know that we've got Anthony Fauci. He's been a big spokesman for the administration and coming through the Trump years. He announced that he felt like he was being unmuzzled when Joe Biden came into office, but he can't be the only one who knows something about our COVID response. I know you've got a guest who wants to give some context to what's happening around the country.
Yeah, we're going to go across the country to Orange County, California, specifically Irvine, California. Talk to Jeff Corless. He runs a communication shop there. He's a strategic advisor, works with senior executives. He also has representing a hospital chain. He's been on the front line of COVID since day one, helping both with internal and external communication. So we're going to get some insights from him on what's happening in Southern California, COVID, hospitalizations.
Let's take a look at that.
Well, Jeff, why don't we get right into it? Obviously, this week on the Huddle, we're really focusing on COVID. Obviously, there is a huge momentum. The Biden White House pushing out the task force, getting people in place. There's a lot of talk here on Capitol Hill, besides the impeachment, but also getting through another COVID relief package, somewhere between $1 trillion and $2 trillion. What's your perspective in California on the need for a COVID relief package? Let's start out there.
Well, thanks, Mark. California really experienced its unprecedented surge of the COVID-19 pandemic between the Thanksgiving holiday and the New Year. We saw an incredible surge in the hospitals throughout the state of California. We were on the brink of deploying crisis care in our hospitals here in this state and having to evaluate and implement policies to determine what care people would get and what kind of tough choices would have to be made if we ran out of resources. And, we work with a number of hospitals across the United States and some here in Southern California. So we saw firsthand the burden that this pandemic placed on California's hospitals over the last 2 months. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in my career. And when I talk to people who have had careers 3 times as long as me, they say the same thing. So this is a multi-generational pandemic of the likes we haven't seen in 100 years. And it really tested our healthcare system. The need for additional COVID relief funding is critical. Hospitals throughout California had to halt elective procedures and non-emergent cases, which is where they get their revenue to survive. So all of the patient care that was being provided was emergency care and mostly inpatient COVID care on a critical level and across the board. And it brought the census of each of the hospitals that we saw up to an unprecedented level that some hospitals that we work with haven't seen in 120 years. So that funding is critical for them to survive and thrive and be able to pivot back to providing a full suite of services and care to the community.
Yeah, I think the scale, when you talk to people on the East Coast or, I talk to my friends in Michigan, I don't think they fully appreciate the size of Southern California. A few weeks back, the LA Times had a headline, 1 in 3 citizens of LA County, which would be like 3 million people, may have contracted coronavirus. Orange County alone, I think there's 3-4 million people. California is a state, one of the largest economies in the world, top 10. I mean, the scale of the state and the resources needed just for your part of the world is staggering.
It really is. Orange County, as you said, over 3.5 million people. Southern California and its 6 major counties combined represent approximately 24 million people. So you think about the impact it has and the fact that many of our counties rely on a private health system. The diversity of the state and particularly the Southern California region also has much to do with it. There's broad spectrum when it comes to economics and the significant amount of multi-generational households where we saw the virus spread. Lower income minority communities were affected most by this pandemic and were most severely hit. And the hospitals that serve underserved communities are the ones that need the resources the most. All hospitals need resources. And it was something that was really never seen before. And it wasn't something that you could just dust a plan off the shelf and everything's going to be okay. This was dealing with it as it arrived.
Governor Newsom has obviously been taking a lot of heat for being aggressive, but it just seems like the month of December really took a toll on California.
You know, after the Thanksgiving holiday, we saw a spike in caseload starting to come into the hospitals in the state. And there was an immediate move by the state to put in place some very strict stay-at-home guidelines, which virtually shut down even outdoor dining throughout the state. And, you know, you did see some restaurants across the state choose to stay open, very few, most complied with the stay-at-home order. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think the great debate over the next couple of years as the experts look at this is, did the stay-at-home orders and the lockdowns work? Because you had states that had the same caseload that had no lockdowns.
Yeah, and just this week, the governor changes his policy again, which seemed a bit of a surprise. No, if I'm reading the stories correctly, I mean, was that expected, or was just the peer pressure of the business community saying, "Hey, we got to get back to work"?
I think the fact that we're seeing the numbers decline was an opportunity for him to lift the stay-at-home orders in phases. And I think hopefully he recognizes the economic devastation the stay-at-home orders have created for small businesses. And if you go ask a restaurateur who kept their restaurant patio open during the stay-at-home order, I talked to several, and you know, I'm not one, but I was listening to what they had to say, and they said, "I'm not putting these people out of work again that work in my restaurant. I've already done it twice this year. I'm not doing it a third time right before the holidays." So if we can follow all of the safety protocols and guidelines and social distancing and cleaning protocols and masking and gloving and all of the things that we were asked to do, and we invested a lot of money in, you know, if we keep doing that and we're not the source of outbreaks and the spreading of the virus, we're going to do that because we're not going to put people out of work. So that was a big struggle in this, balancing doing what was necessary to mitigate spread with, you know, preserving economic activity to the degree you could, and without compromising safety. So that, you know, that is the great debate.
Can't imagine this is an easy time in the advice they're getting. Anyways, what's interesting, you've been working on this issue really from the front lines, almost going on a year now, 11 months, because your client work, you obviously have done a lot of work in the hospital space. I wanted you to talk about what your firm has done, communicating the healthcare heroes work here. You alluded to it earlier, just the amount of sacrifice, you know, frontline healthcare workers are making to really keep us healthy and keep us safe. But, you know, walking into a hospital, knowing that it is a very toxic place to work, what's been some of the messaging around that to keep them motivated, keep them focused, keep them positive?
Well, it's a great question, Mark. And, you know, it was really fascinating for us to go through this pandemic because we've never been through one before. And a pandemic changed the way hospitals have to operate. You can't just walk in the door and hang out in the lobby and go see your friend or relative in their hospital bed. That's too much risk. And so hospitals had to change their visitation policies and even their workplace policies and how people work in the environment they work in. Wearing PPE when they didn't used to wear it unless they were going into a patient room that had an airborne disease in it, and it was a negative pressure room. Negative pressure rooms became critically important to preventing the spread. Quarantine areas in the hospitals. We saw hospitals separate COVID positive patients from the general patient population to mitigate spread. It changed the work environment for all of the staff in the hospitals, because anytime they enter a patient room or a patient floor, they're putting on tons of equipment, going through antechambers that are 100 degrees, So it put a great burden on them. There has been a nursing shortage in the state of California for more than a decade. That's a problem the state's got to fix. But what was so important through this time, especially not knowing how long the pandemic would last, is ensuring that we recognize this above and beyond work that the healthcare worker has done throughout the course of the pandemic. So we're really excited to be a part of creating a Healthcare Heroes program that used video and virtual technology to capture the stories from inside the hospitals. We created an email address and a submission form that we shared with the entire organization and encouraged clinical leadership and hospital level staff to share stories about their observations of what employees had done in hospitals. We then would video conference with them, captured their story on video, recognizing an employee or group of employees who had been seen going above and beyond. And then we shared those videos on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday basis through our regular Healthcare Heroes memo out to the entire staff, so that every other day they were getting videos that told the stories of what our incredible healthcare worker is doing on the front lines. For many, many years, people always knew what nurses and doctors and other healthcare workers, EVS workers who clean facilities, nutritional services staff who are delivering food to the patients, all of these people, are the silent profession that finally was called to rise to the challenge, and they have. We featured all of this recognition on the hospital and health system social media channels so that the public could also see what these healthcare heroes are doing. And it really helped lift morale and maintain culture during what has been a very difficult time.
I wanted to ask you about the challenges of the executives or the administrators being offsite, not on property because of various restrictions, working from home essentially. And how do you run a hospital when your team is divided between offsite and onsite? That's a great point. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely, Mark. Yeah, it's really interesting because every organization faced the need to pivot how it operated in person, and many people went virtual and were able to go work in their homes. But the healthcare worker cannot work in their house. Someone in the accounting department can, or the finance department, or case management, or various departments that don't take you into the direct patient care areas could work virtually. It really separated the healthcare worker on the front lines from management and leadership who are not inside the patient care area. But that created a divide in healthcare organizations. So how did you keep the organization together when they were physically divided? This gave us an opportunity to really increase the amount of internal communications that occurred over the course of the last year between the C-suite and the nurse on the unit caring for the COVID patient. So we spent a lot of our time increasing exponentially the amount of video communications coming from our health system CEO to the various C-suite executives, the hospital level CEOs, and other key leaders in the organization. We had videos coming out from executives from the C-suite and the management team every day in the early days of the pandemic, and periodically every other day throughout the course of 2020. We also deployed a virtual health and wellness program and brought in a health and wellness expert. The executives at the company brought a health and wellness expert in to help us facilitate that, and we delivered regular videos to the organization featuring health and wellness tips, health and wellness videos, meditation, cooking, recipes, all kinds of things to give them something to focus on, to try and give them some relief and bring some balance to the difficult environment they were working in.
Are we going to see like a new meaning of a hospital? Like, it seems to me we're going beyond the physical nature of a hospital. It's really becoming both an online and offline experience. What can we expect from hospitals going forward?
I think the future will bring us much more virtual assessment, things like Teledoc and platforms that allow for virtual visits are going to become the norm. And I think they did through this pandemic. It's always, I grew up in a healthcare family. My father was a physician and my mother was a nurse. Physical diagnosis was a term I heard all the years I was growing up. You have to be seen by a doctor. Well, we have the technology now that you can be seen by a doctor with high definition video and audio, and you truly can understand what's going on with the patient. I don't think that will ever completely eliminate the need for in-person physical diagnosis and engagement between a physician and a patient, but we're going to be doing a lot more of it than we did in the past. And it's going to help us better triage when our hospitals are busy, our emergency rooms are busy. I also think that we will learn a lot from the pandemic about what the hospital of the future looks like. Before this pandemic, hospitals were on a trajectory to increase the amount of outpatient care that's given and focusing on getting people well faster and getting them out of an inpatient bed. So the hospital of the future has fewer inpatient beds and more outpatient resources and health and wellness and well care versus sick care to put a greater emphasis on quality of life. So I think we're going to refine those plans and understand the best way forward with future hospitals as it relates to being prepared to dealing with the pandemic and being able to expand your capacity.
So Jeff, there was a headline in the LA Times a few weeks ago, internal polling suggested that 60% of the LAPD were going to take the vaccine. So from like a messaging communication standpoint, how do we get more Americans vaccinated, more serious? How do we propel the country forward? Is it from the White House? Is it from Sacramento? Is it celebrities? Who's the right messenger to help us move the country forward? Two things.
One of the things that we tried to do and we felt was very important was make sure that people had the facts about what was going on at the time, especially during this unprecedented surge over the last 2 months. Nothing is more important than making sure you have the facts, not my facts, your facts, and everyone else's facts, but the facts. And so we were very insistent upon doing that with reporters. And of course, within the confines of respecting HIPAA and protecting patient information and those types of things. But we wanted to make sure that when reporters told the story, that they had the facts, because nothing is more compelling than the truth. And getting the truth out to people every night in their homes, on their TV screens, and throughout the day was critically important to them, for them to be able to make a decision about how they're going to make choices. And that was one thing that I felt was important to do, and to not do a PR job on the reporters and nothing's going on here. So that was job one. The second job, I think, going forward is peer-to-peer engagement. People trust other people. People clearly, consistently don't trust government. They don't trust a lot of sources that will be talking into the camera. They're going to be skeptical and leery, and that's okay. But I think the more people that choose to accept the vaccine, the more other people will choose to accept the vaccine. That is going to be the best and most effective way for us to inoculate our society and to marginalize this virus. My father was a physician for 52 years, and he was a huge proponent of vaccines. And it was an incredible feat that we were able to get a vaccine safely delivered that's effective within a 9-month period. And it was based on the years and years of research that has been funded to be able to lead up to that. Those who have chosen it are the best people to encourage those who are skeptical and maybe haven't chosen it yet. And we're now seeing that. There are people now who were skeptical and didn't choose it that are now coming back and saying, I want the vaccine. And that's a good thing. And that's going to take time. And I think that is one of the greatest hallmarks of democracy and a free society. You and I will influence each other. I don't think that there's anything that will be more effective than that. There isn't a president of any party or any political leader who's going to influence the public to make this decision. It's going to be you and I. It's going to be our families, our friends, our neighbors, and our communities. Hey, I got it. I'm fine. Here are the things you need to think about. You need to talk to your physician. If you have health risks that need to be addressed, you need to address those things with your physician and make it a decision, but make sure it's an informed decision.
No, I just want to wrap up on that. Obviously, very historic time. Hopefully I'll get to see you again in person on the East Coast or West Coast, or maybe even the middle somewhere in the country soon. But Jeff, thanks for making the time. Thanks for sharing your insights, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure. Stay warm. Stay safe. See you soon.
Mark, that was really a great discussion. I'm continually wowed by how we're finding some great people to give context to you and I, but also to our viewers who are tuning in and want to know more about the political process and inside the Beltway politics like you and I get all the time. I think one thing that it's pretty clear from the name of our show here, but politics is a team sport. It's not something we can do alone.
Jeff's a real pro, and I spent a few years living in Southern California in Laguna Beach, and got to know Jeff through my work on the McCain-Palin campaign. He's been a dear friend. He's a great, confident, smart business guy. So I was very fortunate to hear his insights, and it's going to be really interesting to see what's happening in California. I mean, California's on the front lines. I mean, the scale of what's happening out there, pretty amazing. So it was great to have Jeff join us.
Absolutely. But you know what time it is. It's that time of week again. Mark, who do you want in your huddle this week?
So my pick this week is Major and Champ, the two German Shepherd dogs that have moved into the White House. We have our own little dog here in Alexandria, George, the mini golden doodle. So I know how important it is to have a dog, and it's really fantastic to see dogs back in the White House. Famously, the Trump team did not have pets at the White House, so it's been great, and they seem to be doing really well. There was some footage this week of them barking during a presser, and they seem to be having fun on the South Lawn. They have their own Twitter account. They have swag. So Major and Champ for the win. How about you? Who do you want in your huddle?
I'm glad we both went a little bit lighthearted this week. That I want to pick Jeff Zients, who he is the COVID czar, and he is tackling some big things, but not at all to underplay his critical role in the Biden administration. But he's also the co-owner of Call Your Mother Deli, which is where the president stopped in for his first official visit to a restaurant since becoming the president. After church on Sunday, we saw the motorcade pull up to the Jewish deli in Georgetown and grab some bagels to take back to the White House. A Secret Service agent ran inside and picked up some brunch for the Biden family. So I think this was not only to show that we've got a new government, but to show that there's some of that camaraderie and community back into the Washington, D.C. area as well.
No, and I can attest, Karen and I, we got married at Holy Trinity. And so it was great to see Biden obviously visit that church. And I can attest those bagels are fantastic. Obviously, I'm very excited for science to sort out this COVID situation, but him bringing proper bagels to DC is a big win. So glad to see him in your huddle.
A lot of great insights this week, Mark. As always, I'm glad for our discussions. More huddling coming next week. This has been The Huddle. We'll see you again soon.